He's 9,000 years old, one of the first Americans ever found. Now follow researchers as they find out how he's forever changing our notion of who were the first Americans. Forensic anthropologist Jim Chatters.
This is a first glance, so I don't have a sense of time on him. All I have is just his physical features to work with. Very long, narrow brain case. Fairly distinct brow. These are all characteristics more often see on Western Eurasian skeletons, European skeletons.
The skull appears European, not Native American. Jim Chatters sends a small bone for radiocarbon dating, hoping to solve the mystery of Kennewick Man. A chemist crushes the bone and begins the process of analyzing an isotope called carbon-14. All living organisms contain carbon-14. But at death, this isotope begins to decay at a steady rate. By measuring how much carbon-14 is left, the lab can determine the age. Kennewick Man's age is nothing less than mind-boggling. He is over 9,000 years old, a man who lived before 7,000 BC, and one of the oldest and most complete Americans ever found. And yet, Kennewick Man is a puzzle. Scientists have long believed that the first and oldest Americans were Native Americans. But with his unusual features, Kennewick Man doesn't look like a Native American.
Well, the best way to characterize this is that for most of my career of more than 30 years, I have been following in the tracks of someone, and I thought I knew who I was following. And then finally, with Kennewick Man, I caught up with him, and he turned around, and he wasn't who I expected him to be.
The traditional theory of the peopling of the Americas begins during the last ice age, when a land bridge opens up between Siberia and Alaska. A group of people leave Asia, walk across the land bridge, and settle the Americas. It was long thought that these people were the ancestors of today's Native Americans. Kennewick Man may overturn this long-held scientific belief. But this hastily made video is the last Jim Chatters ever sees of his remarkable discovery. For only 4 days after the radiocarbon date, the skeleton is confiscated by the government. All scientific work stops, as 5 local Native American tribes claim the 9,000-year-old skeleton as their ancestor. Jans has a radical theory. None of these ancient skulls are Native American. He believes Native Americans migrated from Asia years later. Instead, the ancient skulls may represent 3 or even more earlier immigrant groups. It's a revolutionary idea. Long before Ellis Island, America may have had a multitude of immigrants. A startling new theory arises. The Bering Land Bridge might not be the only path to America.
In 1996, archaeologists made one of the most baffling discoveries ever made in North America. This spear point was found in Virginia. When Bruce saw it, he was amazed. It looked identical to those discovered in France. Carbon dating showed it was buried 17,000 years ago, when archaeologists believed North America was uninhabited. It was a revelation. Could it indicate the impossible?
The idea that people may have populated the New World from Europe, the European continent, is so dramatically different from anything I was ever taught that it's almost an unbelievable concept.
For almost a century, scientists have believed that North America wasn't discovered until 12,000 years ago, when people from Asia crossed a land bridge from Russia to Alaska. But what Bruce had seen challenged the accepted theory.
It was one of those sort of, no, this can't be, and yet, how can it not be? Because it's there. It's right there in front of us.
Had Europeans brought their technology to North America 6,000 years before anyone else? And if they had, the even tougher question facing scientists was, how? To reach North America, they would have to cross the ultimate natural barrier, the Atlantic Ocean.
While much of the ocean's floor remains unexplored, for thousands of years, philosophers and scientists have been drawn to one of the greatest mysteries of the sea, the legend of the lost city of Atlantis.
Harvard archaeologist Barry Fell has spent years studying inscriptions and drawings from Mystery Hill and other unexplained ruins in North America.
Now, what about some of these inscriptions that have been found? What do they indicate in terms of people's presences in this area? Where are they from?
Well, they really tell us that America in ancient times was a melting pot of the races of Europe, just as it is today. Same peoples from all parts of Europe and North Africa, living together, even speaking their own languages side by side, and writing their own inscriptions and their own writing systems.
What people came here?
Basques from Portugal, Celts from Spain and Portugal, Phoenicians from Carthage and probably from Phoenicia itself in Syria, and ancient Egyptian traders too.
Why do you think these people came here?
Probably initially by accident. Fishermen, you know, the Portuguese people are wonderful deep-sea fishermen, and inevitably a fisherman is going to be blown away from land in a storm. A fisherman knows how to look after himself when he's blown out to sea, and in modern times very long voyages have been performed that way. So initially accidentally, later deliberately.
Portugal's dorymen still ply the Atlantic in the kind of small but sturdy craft they've apparently used for centuries. That the ancestors of these fishermen were skilled sailors, few could dispute. Bolzer doubts that a fisherman blown off course would attempt to build a city. He and Fell pursue another line.
In other words, there's no doubt in your mind that ancient people from the Mediterranean area came and settled in New England, among other places.
No doubt at all. They probably settled all that part of North America that could be reached by ship. That is to say, the whole Mississippi Valley and the branches of the Mississippi.
The Mediterranean. At one time, Knossos was her capital, a jewel-like city on the island of Crete. All that's left now are the weather-worn ruins of graceful temples, courtyards, and apartments. The people of this island were called Minoans. They were heirs to Phoenician sea kings who sailed here from what is now Lebanon. The Minoans loved music and art almost as much as they loved the sea. Even their architecture had a lyrical quality. The sea never seemed far from their thoughts. They must have gloried in all its aspects. The sea brought the Minoans power and wealth. Perhaps they had commerce with other advanced civilizations now lost to us. History records that there were catastrophic earthquakes in the Mediterranean basin around 1600 BC. Knossos was by then Queen City of the Mediterranean. She may have been a haven for the refugees of doomed civilizations. If so, the influx of new citizens must have created pressure for expansion. The Minoans already had colonies on the north coast of Africa. and recent evidence discovered underwater in the Caribbean suggests that they had traveled to the Americas. It is nevertheless a radical theory that sailors from a Bronze Age culture could have dispatched the first strange visitors to the New World.
Professor Fell, how do your colleagues at Harvard feel about these amazing discoveries you've made?
Very mixed feelings. My closest colleagues, who of course support my work and assist me in it, have very positive feelings, and some other colleagues, more particularly concerned with traditional aspects of archaeology, so far have not supported my opinions.
Well, how did the ancient Phoenicians get here?
They had ships, Dr. Halser, better than those available to Columbus. Here is a carving of the hull of one of them that we found at Mount Hope, Rhode Island. We have one other carving from another part of North America. And then the fact that they made the voyages is sufficiently plain from the inscriptions that they left on